Welcome to the Mac Power Users. I'm David Sparks and joined as always by your friend of mine, Mr. Stephen Hackett. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, David. How are you?
I am doing great. It is time to talk about a standard fare topic on Mac Power Users. This was one of the shows we covered in our very first 10 episodes, but it's been 800 or so episodes since then, so I thought it was maybe time to talk about our writing workflows again.
Yeah, it's an important thing, and we were putting this together. I sort of had the realization everybody writes, not just writers. Any kind of job, you're doing this stuff. So it seems like a good thing to revisit.
Yeah, that's why everybody's so freaked out about AI, frankly, because that's the one thing it does, is right. We're going to be talking about the whole gamut here, from research to different writing types to tools to editing. I think we've got a really great outline. So hopefully today you will get something that'll be helpful to you. Before we get started, in terms of preliminary announcements, I would recommend signing up for my newsletter. I'll put a link in the show notes. I'll have an announcement coming out very soon about the 2026 edition of the Productivity Field Guide. I'm really hard at work on it, and it is nearly done. It may be released when this comes out, but it'll probably be a few days later. But sign up for it, gang, and come along with me on this journey.
Yeah. It's exciting. Always look forward to those updates.
Yeah, that one, I was just thinking, that's the one that gets me the best feel emails. Like people really use it for transformation, and that feels pretty good. Anyway, so we're doing that again this year. On More Power Users today, we're going to be talking about the digital legacy. What about all this writing that you're doing on your computer? Does it go away with you? Let's talk about some strategies and thoughts around that.
Yeah, it's a big question. It's one I think a lot about.
Yeah. Your life's work is in these words, and what happens to it later.
Yeah.
All right. Let's start with the overview, though. Like you said earlier, writing is important.
Yeah, it's something that we're all doing, from an email to the team, or something that you're going to pass down through the generations. It really spans the entire width of those things. And I also think it's important to remember that writing is different than publishing. When I think about writing, because of my job, I think about publishing. I do write a lot for myself, don't get me wrong, but a lot of my sort of workflow around writing, the tools that I use, have publishing as the output. And those are really different things, and we're going to treat them as different things in this episode. But it sort of just struck me as we were thinking about this and talking about it that there is a difference, there's a distinction there that I think is important.
Yeah, there's definitely different elements to it. People were writing long before the computer was invented. The computer was sold initially, I was there, as a writing tool, a way to help you do writing better. We're done with the whiteout and the typewriters. Instead, we could use a word processor. But as these machines get smarter, I think there's even more opportunity to help them enhance your writing. But we're also at this weird crossroads where the things are getting so smart that they now want to write for you, which is not really what we're about.
Yeah, that's right.
So the line we want to walk in today's episode is we want to help you build a tool set to help you make your words better. And I think the goal is to kind of think about it holistically throughout the whole process. Depends on the type of writing you do, but there's a lot of ways to go about that. And we should probably start with research and prep. But before we do, one caveat is there's a whole separate avenue of academic writing. If you're writing for your PhD thesis or for publication in academic journals, there's a whole different workflow to that. Like a lot of times there's special software you need. And we've had guests in the past that do that, and I'm sure we will again. But neither Stephen and I are academics, and so we thought we should probably stay clear of that. So we are going to. Today we're going to talk about writing in general. If you're working on your PhD thesis, I still think we can probably give you some help today, but ultimately that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, absolutely. A whole world that honestly I'm not even that familiar with.
I still don't know how to pronounce latex. I don't know if it's latex, latex. Do you even know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a tool to transform text between different formats.
Or no, it also lets you put mathematical formulas in.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah,
bunch of
so
stuff.
if I can't pronounce latex properly, I got no business telling you about it.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's my test. Uh, all right. So let's start with research and prep. Writing often starts with thought before you start writing. There's a lot of great tools available to you for that purpose. And both Stephen and I do a lot of research based writing. A lot of the things that, I mean, these outlines are research based speaking, but the outline is research based. And also, I've written books and Stephen's written books too. And we've done a lot of different things in the past. Stephen, what are some of your favorite apps to collect research as you get working?
Man, for me, Devon Think is absolutely critical. And for a bunch of reasons. The primary one is that I can just throw a bunch of stuff into it and find it later and find relationships between things that I wasn't aware of. For me, very often things go into Devon Think just as I find them. I find something that's interesting or something that sort of piques my interest, but I'm not working on something that it's particularly relevant to in the moment. So I'll save it with the hopes that it becomes relevant later on. And I've got a bunch of databases and a lot of stuff in Devon Think, ranging from PDFs to images, photos, all sorts of things. And so
Yeah,
when I've got a topic, I can sit down and see, okay, what has past Stephen collected on these topics?
yeah. I mean, Devin Think was talking about AI a long time before OpenAI existed. And, that the way they talk about AI, I call it the OG AI. It was in the search. It was just a very smart search that could sniff out from thousands of documents the one or two you need. Something that always impressed me about Devin Think, I remember when I was doing legal research, because I also used it for legal research, I would just dump case law and statutes in it, and it would find references to a concept where the word of the concept did not appear in it. It could still find them. So, like if I was looking for res ipsa loquitur, all the lawyers out there will remember that from law school, I would still find cases on res ipsa loquitur that didn't say res ipsa loquitur. And it's like, what is this dark magic? How does Devin Think know this? And to this day, I actually don't know. But that's something it's very good at. And in this particular instance of writing research tool, that's exactly what you want. Go through my bucket of stuff and find related stuff that I can work on. So I think that's really good. Another thing on Devon Think I would add is linking. The Mac Finder does not allow you to link out easily when you're doing research. Being able to link back to particular articles or anything you want is good. They have the tools in there. In fact, we're going to talk later about when you're doing research. You use a PDF tool to mark it up. You can do all that stuff in Devon Think. So Devon Think today and probably Scrivener are the two apps that are going to crop up multiple times in our discussion because they kind of are apps written around the concept of this whole process, and they do a lot of these tools for you. But I couldn't agree with you more. Devon Think is a key part of my workflow, even not just for research. And I think if you wanted to do some serious writing, it'd be hard to do better than just getting a license for Devon Think and start dropping everything in it.
Totally agree. And they've got a really generous trial, which is one of the things that I like about Devon Think. And it is a tool. It doesn't it doesn't translate all your files into some weird format, right? So you can get in and out really easily.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Native Mac app in an era where native Mac apps are more scarce.
Mm-hmm.
Solid app. And constantly developed. They got a new version out last year. Scrivener, since I mentioned, I just want to say it's really a writing app, but it's also a research app. And I'm going to talk about it more when we get into the writing section to kind of address it holistically. But you can use Scrivener to write a book or a thesis or whatever, and you can have all your research combined with your writing, which is very handy. And we'll just put a pin in that one as a research tool because we'll come back to it. But there's a couple new ones on the block. Keep It is really good. Have you worked with Keep It?
Yeah, I played with it when it first came out, and then a couple of years afterwards, they had a pretty nice update. It's sort of like Keep It kind of falls into the in-between space between Devon Think. It's less than that, I think, but it's also way more than a bookmark tool.
Yeah.
And version 2 is out, and it runs on all the platforms and syncs, and it's pretty
Yeah,
great.
no, it's solid. And if you don't want to go the dev and think route for whatever reason, I think you should look at Keep It. I think that's kind of the second choice I would make there. And then the third choice would be, which a lot of people do, is just Finder. Make a folder in Finder and just start dropping things in there. And for small projects, that's fine. I mean, the Finder also has search. Pretty much anything you get these days is OCR'd, like in terms of PDF research. So you can go through, and the Finder can work just fine. What the Finder's not going to do is find you that mystery res ipsa loquitur case, because it's just not that smart. But, you don't want to spend any money, and you got a little project and you want to do some research. Finder's perfectly fine. I mean, I wouldn't not use it.
No, absolutely not. And your point about OCR is a good one to touch on, because a lot of research material is PDF for a lot of different people. Yeah, a lot of stuff comes OCR'd now. I mean, I remember back in the day, like downloading PDFs, and you have to have like kind of an expensive piece of software, right, to OCR them so it knows about all the text in the PDF. Now Preview does it, right? Preview can find it. Dev and Think can OCR things as you import them if they don't have that data in them.
It's a nice
that is
feature.
really an improvement. I mean, even in the time that I've been writing the sorts of things I write, back in the day, it was such a headache.
I used to write like custom scripts using Hazel and AppleScript to like go through and apply OCR to files that didn't have it. It was very complicated. And then I just got a Dev and Think license. So you just drag the file in, and then it's OCR'd. That was a good investment. Another piece of research for a lot of web-based research is just collecting links, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many link collection apps in our ecosystem. And a lot of these apps have sort of merged with the classic read it later concept or category of app.
Yeah.
So I've mentioned before, I use Good Links, which is kind of both, right? I can have a bunch of URLs in there. I can tag them, but they all also have a read, unread status, and they have a really nice view, like reader view. You can highlight things in the new version. These tools are inching their way more and more towards research tools, as opposed to just, a list of URLs that I saved in the past.
And one I really want to call out, and honestly, we may just give this app its own episode later this year, is Readwise Reader.
Mm-hmm.
The Readwise service, which I've been talking about for years, is like a spaced repetition for your reading. If you highlight something on your Kindle, it shows up. But they added their own reader service, and it is so powerful. And it's got like a custom email, so you can have things sent to it. You can tag things. You can highlight them right in the app. And I think this would be a great research tool.
For sure. What about idea development? So we've talked about research. I think for at least both of us, that's sort of a background process running all the time. But when an idea strikes, and very often it strikes at a time that is not super convenient, at least for me, what are you doing to capture that idea, but then also to develop it and see, to test it, to see, is this idea going to blossom into something bigger?
Yeah. I went and looked, because this is another one that I've been talking about the same apps for over 10 years. And so I made a real effort to find better or different apps I could recommend. Because outlining I've been doing with Omni Outliner forever. And you know what? I still prefer Omni Outliner. It's just so powerful. They've got a new version coming out. And, it looks pretty, but it's also powerful. And I couldn't find anything I liked better.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you could do it in Omni Outliner. Outlines also could be done in Apple Notes with just bullets or numbering. They've got that built in. And there's a bunch of apps in between. There's some basic text ones. Any Markdown editor, we're going to talk about those. You can do one in, kind of depending on what you're using it for. There are a lot of great options on Outliners. All of the ones we're talking about are multi-platform, so you can do it on your iPad and your Mac and your iPhone. So those are out there. And likewise, I went looking, because I've been using MindNode for, again, over a decade. And I love that app because my brain is very visual.
Mm-hmm.
Developing ideas with a mind map makes sense to me. I remember like 20 years ago, I was sitting in the hallway of the LA Superior Court, and we were trying to settle a case, and the other lawyer had a really nice laptop, and he had this software. It was a mind mapping software, and he had paid like $1,000 for it. And that was when this technology first started to show up. Like mind mapping was so different that people were charging extraordinary amounts of money for it. And then I found like MindNode, which at the time was like $15, and did the same features. And it's just, they've constantly kept it up to date. They keep releasing updates for it. And both of those apps to me are just so good for what I call cooking ideas. For me, on a big writing project, any type of project I do, frankly, there's a phase where I collect research on it, and then there's a phase where I start acting on it. And the first step for me is to open an Omni Outline or a MindNode and just start putting a few pieces in. And I do it slowly over time. Under the best of circumstances, you can just touch it every few days and just kind of keep adding to it and let your subconscious brain do the work for you. And this is one of those examples where the computers make us better, because having this stuff on you at all times and being able to pop in and out of these outlines and mind maps really lets you kind of get the idea solid before you actually start writing.
Yeah, I've said before on the show that I'm not an outliner. If I'm working on a long article, I work through it by writing. But this sort of tool can be very helpful for me, at least, and I think for others, to see if an idea is actually an idea for a written piece.
Yeah.
And not necessarily just sort of like a tweet link thought, right? There's a difference between those things. But I think the other reason this is important is that it slows you down, right? That if you are thinking about, thinking in an office context, right? You've got a big email to send to the team. Well, just writing that in your email client, you may not be as thoughtful about it as if you have an outline in a text editor somewhere else, and you're kind of putting it together, maybe even over a couple of days, like you mentioned, where it's like something comes to you and you can add to it. This process does lengthen the overall project, but it basically in every way that I think that's a good thing. It lets you think more deeply about things. It lets you think more calmly about things, which is also can be very important, right? If you're sending an email to somebody, it's kind of like the write the letter and stick it in the drawer, sort of the same outcome there. And so even though I'm not sort of naturally an outliner, sometimes I will turn to these things if I know something needs to go slower than maybe I would go otherwise.
I'd love to see you try that more, like with something you're going to write, just as an experiment to see how it works for you. But throughout my career, I had times where I had to write very important letters to a judge or to opposing counsel. And just in my personal life, I've had very important communications I had to make. And all of those I have made in the last 15 years, have made via Omni Outliner or MindNode as a starting point. And they're better for it.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing you have to do, though, is you have to have time. If it's something you have to get out today, I don't think this really works that well. You might as well just sit down and start writing if you have to get it out today. But I think if you apply some forethought, you'll find that there's a lot of these communications that you can take time on. Start early, put it on the calendar. I'm going to send it next week, and start the mind map today. And I guarantee you, getting back to the promise at the beginning of the show, can we make the technology improve our writing? This is one of the most powerful ways you can do that. And you'll really come up with the winner ideas for the letter. The order will be right if you just give yourself time. And we did an episode, it's like the most timeless episode of Mac Power Users. It's called Cooking Ideas. I keep threatening to go back and do it again. But the short version of it is you step into one of these development platforms, and you look at it for 10 minutes and you make adjustments to it, and then you come back in a day or two. And the thing is, in the back of your brain, you've got a process running, trying to make it better. And you're not even aware of it. But when you reopen it in a couple days, you will immediately know what works and what doesn't, or what you should add. And it's a human ability that we have that we should all take advantage of.
Yeah, and these tools, these software tools can really be useful in this stage of writing. I know for me, at least, like for instance, I just recently wrote an article about some issues surrounding XAI and their chatbot doing just terrible things on the internet. And, it was it was almost a week actually since that news broke. And when I wrote about it, and, I was going to write about it because I've been covering XAI because their data centers are in my hometown here in Memphis, and that's complicated.
But
I didn't
very
know
happy about that. I get the inclination.
I'm not happy about that.
Yeah.
But I wasn't just going to link to it, right?
Yeah.
I needed something to say about it. And seriously, it was when I was doing something completely different that the thought popped in my head. It was like, okay, I've talked a lot about AI's impact on my community in terms of energy expenditure and pollution and the job creation and those sorts of things. But the thought that came to mind was, okay, when this tool goes off the rails, like how should the community react to that? Right? We've reacted to all these other things, but how should we react to when these tools are used for bad? And it was like, I was doing something with the family. I was not at work. It was over the holidays, over New Year's. And I was like, oh, that's it, right? That time, that space was important, but I had my phone with me. And so I just opened Apple Notes and made a quick note. And all it said was like Grok / local response ? That's all it was. And I think it led to an article that was way better if I had just banged something out the day the story broke and had a quip about it. But it's like, I let it think, let my brain think on it, even subconsciously in the background. And then when the idea happens, capture it. And MindNode, Omni Outliner, Apple Notes, whatever tool you're using, if it's something that's on your phone as well as your Mac, it means that you can capture that in the moment. And then when you're ready to sit down, you can further address it.
And my argument is that you actually set the fuse on that idea in the moment you said, I'm not just going to link this. I need to have something more to say. You didn't know what it was, but then that background process started working on it and eventually spit out the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be curious that the next time you hit that, where you say, I'm not going to just link this, if you opened up an outline or a mind map and just wrote a couple words into it and made a practice out of going back to it. Just out of, I don't know, I'm trying to sell you on something.
It's a good experiment.
But, yeah. In addition to idea development, when you're thinking through an idea, it doesn't hurt to do, just start writing down general thoughts. And now that's so much easier with the arrival of artificial intelligence voice to text tools. I've been doing a series in the labs on all these, and like one that kind of a middle of the road one that I think is really good is Whisperflow. I don't know if you've played with it or not, but it's got a subscription. So, some people don't want to do that, but I used to pay I think $80 a month for a voice to text subscription. And now it's like $15. So it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot better. And, Whisperflow is a good one. There's more complex ones out there. But if you are developing an idea for a big writing project and you've got your research, you're doing idea development, it wouldn't hurt once in a while just to sit down and talk to voice memos or use something like Whisperflow to just talk the words out. We were just talking yesterday in a labs meetup about the rubber ducky experiment. I don't know if you ever heard of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there was a computer science professor, and he made his students, when they came and visited him, tell their problem to the rubber ducky outside of his office.
Mm-hmm.
And many times in the process of explaining the idea to the rubber ducky, the students found the answer. They didn't even need to talk to the professor. And I think that can work in your research development for your big writing projects too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's called rubber duck debugging. It's just like my favorite, one of my favorite things. But what's interesting about that is we already know this to be true in other parts of our lives, right? If you're trying to make a big decision, you talk to your significant other or talk to a friend or a parent or a sibling or something, right? And very often we find that in the process of talking through it, you sort of realize what you actually think. Yeah, when you're talking to the rubber duck doesn't know anything about Python script that you're working on, right? But talking through it or writing through it can be extremely useful in exploring the idea and kind of getting to the crux of it. And yeah, dictation's a fantastic way to do it. I am doing a lot more dictation than I used to. I'm just using the built-in stuff on the iPhone. And I've actually found, weirdly enough, Tot, which we've talked about before, version 2 is out now. I'm a big fan of this little app. I can just open, if I'm working on something, I may have like a page and Tot dedicated to it. It's like open it and, speak a couple sentences and then move on. And because it all syncs, it's on my phone, it's on my Mac, etc., then it's ready for me when it's time to sit down and work.
Yeah. And I think the final point under the research and prep outline is the role of artificial intelligence here. Like, I'm going to be clear, I don't like artificial intelligence writing for me. I feel like I'm only on this earth so many days.
Mm-hmm.
I want the words that I publish to be mine. But I'm not adverse to having AI help me make better words. And so one thing I have done is when I get an outline or a mind map together, I'll send a picture of it to Claude and say, here's the outline I have for this thing I'm working on. Do you think I missed anything? Mm-hmm. Or do you see any problems with my outline? And then it'll critique it. And often it will come up with ideas that I've already thought of and dismissed, but occasionally it comes up with ones that I haven't. I think that's a useful feature. So I'm not having it update the outline for me. I'm having it tell me where it thinks I missed things. And if I did miss something, I'll go back and do the work of updating the outline for that point or researching it or whatever I have to do. So I think that's a good use of AI. And I know everybody's on a different place on the spectrum. Every time I talk about this, I hear from people telling me that I should have it do everything, and I hear from people telling me I should have it do nothing. But that's where I'm comfortable, is saying, okay, critique this for me. I don't have someone sitting here with me all day, so I think it's useful for that. But we all have to kind of pick our own lines, but I'll tell you, that's something I do.
Yeah. One of my favorite little subplots in the Mac Power users universe right now is that after Dr. Drain came on and we talked about proofreading with AI tools.
Yeah.
He's just been on a whole journey with it. I'm going to have his most recent blog post in the show notes. But yeah, it's a great use of it. I don't want it to write for me. I don't want it to rewrite for me, but hey, this is a chunk of text. What would you suggest, right? The same way that I use Grammarly, which I still use. I used it on that Grok article that I wrote recently. I'm taking them as suggestions. It's not gospel and it's not me, right? That's my problem. My sort of fundamental problem with that. But it's a tool and it's along the same line. It's further down the line, but it's fundamentally no different than the red and green squiggly underlines under your text.
Yeah.
Those are suggestions too, right? Sometimes I want to make up a word or smash two words together, or sometimes I do this thing where I do a purposefully run-on sentence. It's just to make a point, and Grammarly doesn't like that, but that's what I want to do, and it's part of my style sometimes. And so I was no, that's just a suggestion. I'm not going to take it. And I think that's a good use of these tools if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah. Anytime the AI is getting involved with your voice, you got a problem. But in the research mode, I feel like this is a great opportunity to get one more input. And again, you just have to look at it as a very eager intern. And interns give you all sorts of ideas that you reject, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But once in a while, they come up with a good idea, and that can get folded into the overall research.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about ideation and research tools, but when it's time to sit down at the keyboard, we're gonna move that little cursor, left to right across the page. We've got a lot of options, right? And I think this is an area. I was kind of reflecting on this. This may not make any sense, but just stick with me for a second. I think sometimes we have this romantic idea about writing, and I think it comes from people who lived through the typewriter age, or even people my age, right? When I sat down to write a paper in school, if I still lived at home, I was going to the computer, the computer desk, right? And opening it and firing up Windows 98 or whatever. writing now can be done anywhere. And I think sometimes we look at the past like, oh gosh, like I need my exact things. And for some people that's true and that's legitimate. But the tools we have now just like we can research, just like we can outline anywhere, we can write anywhere, and we can write with the tool or the software that makes the most sense for us. So we have a lot of tools here in this document we're going to talk about, but there's so many more, right? And sometimes it is as simple as like a legal pad and a pen, but sometimes you need the most complicated software known to man, right? So there's a range here, but in just thinking about that, like I don't think we have to be as precious with the tools as we used to be, but I also understand the desire to be precious about them, if that makes sense.
Just remember Papa Hemingway, he just had a cup full of sharp pencils, you know, and he wrote until all the pencils were dull, and then he went marlin fishing and had a beer, and he wrote better than I'll ever write. So
yep, same.
But in preparing the outline for this, I thought it'd be fun to kind of break it down by the format of writing that you're doing, because we're all writing, but we're writing in different formats. So we are going to be talking about different apps. And I guess another point I would make is that there's a lot of great apps now. You know, that wasn't true in the past, but now Apple has opened up these APIs where small developers can make great apps that sync and do all the basics that you need from a writing app. So as a result, there's a lot of interesting opinions out there and interesting apps available to you. So let's start with the real basic one, the short form, quick capture applications. I know you've already mentioned Tot. I think that one really stuck for you, right?
Yeah, it's just something about the constraints. You've got this many number of pages, and that's it, right? Because in Tot, like each page is a dot by color. I also like the color. It's like a sort of a reinforcement thing of like where it is in the app. But yeah, and it's just super lightweight. Like that's what I love about it. It's just it does so little. And for me, in this category of just quick notes or quick capture, that's what matters to me the most. And so yeah, when Tot 2 came out, I was like, let's go. You know, I'm all about it.
Well, I really think the constraints are the selling point with Tot, in addition to the fact that it's kind of gorgeous. You know, like the design of it's really nice. But you know, the thing I like about it is like you can be in the menu bar on your app, on your Mac, and you can see those 7 notes up there. Very quick access to anything you wrote anywhere. I keep wanting to incorporate Tot. I keep trying, but I always end up back in Drafts, which is another one. Drafts is more powerful. It also has the menu bar. It has a lot of the same features, but it's plus more. And for instance, I've got a lot of automations and things I've written in Drafts where I can write a draft and have it, you know, format and send to my publishing platform or whatever with one button, or even just like export as rich text, you know, or things I want to do with the text. And I can just never get past in Tot that I've got to go somewhere else to do that stuff, where in Drafts I can just do it. And so that's just my own preference, but I think both of those are excellent quick capture applications.
For sure. I mean, and Drafts does unlock the what comes next, right? With Tot, basically copy and pasting out of it, which is fine. But Drafts can scale or can go like further into the process than Tot can, with all of its actions and all of its sharing capability. And you know, we did an episode with Greg a couple of years ago, and I'll reiterate something we said then. One of the great strengths of Drafts is the community around it. People building things to work in a conjunction with Drafts. And it's just really cool. I think Greg's done a really good job stewarding this application and community over the years. And it's really become something special, I think, in our world.
And the thing about Drafts is it kind of straddles the line. It goes beyond short form and quick capture because you can tag your documents. You can actually use a document storage system. And there are people listening to the show right now who probably have over 1,000 notes in Drafts. And they're working with it just fine. So I would say, I guess if you haven't tried either one of these, I would try them both and see which one resonates with you. But if you're just looking for something, you don't think you're going to have more than 3 or 4 notes, you're not going to be wanting to process them, then Tot is probably what you're looking for. If you're looking to get a little more oomph behind that, then Drafts is probably what you're going to like. But they're both excellent apps.
For sure.
And Drafts you can make pretty too, because you can change the look of it yourself. The other one I think on short form capture that's worth mentioning is Apple Notes.
Yeah.
And Apple's done a lot of effort making Quick Notes a thing. And you don't have to pay anybody. That's already on all your devices, and no matter what platform. We've talked about this in prior shows, but like you can have in the control center a button that opens up a new note really quick, or swipe up from the bottom right corner of your iPad, or on your Mac, go to, put your mouse at the bottom corner. So there's a lot of ways on all your Apple platforms that you can very quickly do quick capture short form text just using Apple Notes.
Yeah, for sure. The little kind of hang up for me there is, we talk about this when we talk about Apple Notes like every time. The formatting can be a little bit weird sometimes. Now, in the newest version of Notes, there are some, you can export as Markdown. So if you're writing in Markdown, or that's sort of the language your other tools use, that has helped a lot. It used to be like copying out of Notes and pasting somewhere else. I was like, this formatting is bananas, right? But the addition of Markdown support, and it is basic. Notes is not a Markdown editor like the way Drafts or some of the other apps we're getting ready to talk about can be, but it does help. And I think that's been a really good addition in Notes.
And like Drafts, Apple Notes is not just exclusively a quick capture tool. It's a storage tool, a handwriting tool, a PDF tool. It does a lot more. But this is one of its many features. And like if you want to keep it simple, you really could get by without Drafts or Tot for quick capture, so long as you master that quick note feature in Apple Notes. Another downside of it, I'd say, for quick capture is like once you write the note, like what do you do with it? It's kind of, that you've got to like make it fit somewhere, or you're going to have trouble finding it later. I guess I shouldn't say that. Search is just fine, but it does feel like noise in your system when you have a lot of quick capture notes in Apple Notes that you haven't really properly processed.
I think that's true.
Okay, let's take it up a notch. Okay, beyond short form capture, let's talk about just Markdown. Both you and I are huge fans of it. This is something that John Gruber, his gift to the world, is the Markdown format. It's a way to write in plain text for publishing to the web in very simple syntax that anybody can learn in about 30 minutes at the most. And it allows your text to be kind of timeless. If you think about the old days, what was that one that we used to use? Applewrite or MacWrite?
MacWrite.
If I gave you a MacWrite file today, Stephen, well, I'm not going to say that to Stephen. If anybody in the audience I gave a MacWrite file to, could they open it other than Stephen Hackett? I think most of us probably couldn't. Mm-hmm. Whereas you write something in Markdown, your great-grandchildren's grandchildren are going to be able to see that file because it's just plain text.
Just plain text, yeah. I write basically exclusively in Markdown when I'm looking to publish something, but even something just for myself. I've made this joke before, but it's true. Like I tend to write in Markdown even in like a paper notebook, right? Using the little pound symbols for headers and stuff.
Yeah.
But there are some great applications in the Apple ecosystem that revolve around Markdown, and some have come and gone, right? There was a period of time 12, 13 years ago where like there was an explosion of Markdown text editors on the iPhone, and they would sync with Dropbox, and you could use like something like NVAlt on your Mac and like I ran that system for years. Now they tend to be a bit more end to end, and I think in the ones that I have sampled, one of the nicest ones, and one that I do use if I'm writing something long form, is IA Writer. It's been around a long time. It's Mac, Windows, iPhone, iPad. It all syncs up. These folks went so far as to make their own typefaces. Just like, what a power move. It's like, hey, we think we can make a typeface that's perfect for our application. And IA Writer has some really cool features. I mean, yes, it's Markdown, and yes, it syncs, but they have some really great tools in terms of focus, which we'll talk about more in a little while, but it's a very simple user interface, and it gives you a lot of tools to help you like look at and analyze your writing. It is something that I found to be really great over the years.
Yeah, I am a fan. I'm a license. I pay my license
Mm-hmm.
I also pay for IA Presenter, which you may not know about, but it's an excellent Markdown-based presenter app made by the same people. But yeah, this is a great app to go into for, like you said, the long-form writing if you want to work in Markdown. It's
Yeah.
definitely the prettiest, and that font they made it looks great on your screen. And like you said, we're going to talk later about focus and things, but this is a great app to really screw down your concentration and make something great with your cursor. And I think this is the necessary first one we mentioned for Markdown.
Yeah. Some of the features in IA Writer actively, I think, make you a better writer. So they have things like syntax highlighting and style check. So syntax highlighting will basically show you, like, hey, highlight all the adjectives that I've used, or show me all the adverbs that I'm using. And when you turn that on, you really learn, like, oh, I really use basically 3 adjectives over and over in this piece, or in this, whatever it is. And it can give you insight into that you honestly may not come across otherwise. So it'll highlight adjectives, nouns, adverbs, verbs, and conjunctions. It can really help you deal with repetition or phrasing that's not quite right. It's those sorts of things that, in addition to just, like, it's just nice to use, that set IA Writer apart for me. That there's not a ton of other tools out there that are giving you this sort of thing in a native Mac app locally, and at the end of the day, it is still just Markdown.
Yeah. Although I would add to the point that I don't turn on the IA Writer proofing tools until I'm done writing, because I find them distracting.
Same.
While I'm writing. Yeah. This is an overlap section for me, because this is again where drafts appears too. Because drafts also can be kind of the Markdown writer for everything.
Totally.
It does a great job of syntax highlighting. I've got the Apple colors. I downloaded I forget what they call it in the app, but basically a visual kind of overlay where it's using the Apple 6 colors for the heading colors, which makes me happy.
Nice.
And I've got a font that I like, and so it looks really good. And I use it for kind of the long form stuff too. So the quick capture stuff can turn into the long form stuff. I do also use IA Writer though. Those are the 2 I use in this category.
There are some others, right? This is a big field. I've used Byword a ton in the past. It's a great Mac app. One of its cool things is it has a built-in Markdown previewer. So you just hit a keyboard shortcut and you go from your Markdown to what it would be rendered on the web as HTML, which can be extremely useful to see if you accidentally made any errors in your Markdown. That's definitely one that's been in my toolbox for a long time as well.
Yeah. We could probably fill an hour of talking about different Markdown editors. There's so many. The reason why there was this explosion back in the day was Apple didn't do a very good job of supporting rich text on iOS. So people, as a matter of necessity, were going to Markdown. And that's why we had all of these. Back in the day, I don't know if it still exists or not, Brett Terpstra had a massive spreadsheet of all the Markdown editors available for iPhone. Just because there were so many, it was hundreds. Now they do a better job with rich text on iPhone. I think a lot of those went away.
Yeah, they do.
And the ones we're talking about are the ones that we can like and recommend. If you've got one that you're using different than the 3 we've talked about, and it's doing it for you, then just stick with it. There's a lot of great apps still out there for this category.
For sure. Yeah, that page on his site was called iText Editors. I'll put that in the show notes, because it's a lot of fun stuff in here.
Is it still live or is it historical?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bet a bunch of these apps aren't live anymore, but that's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the next rung up the ladder is the true long form stuff, where you're writing a long piece, or like book stuff. Like when I wrote the books for Wiley Press, I used Scrivener for those. Another really good, I think the 2 big ones for the Apple ecosystem are Scrivener and Ulysses. Have you got any experience with Ulysses? Have you worked with that app?
I have. It's an app that I've been perpetually curious about, but uh, when I use apps like this or like Scrivener, I sort of run into the feeling is that because I'm not doing a lot of long form stuff, they seem to be over featured for me. Like if I were doing a book again, I've done, let's call it 1.5 books. If I were to do another one, I think I would strongly look at them again. But the longest thing I'm normally writing is, 3,000 word blog post or something. And I don't
Yeah.
have a lot of components within that. So I feel at least like I'm not exactly the right user for these apps, but I know they're both incredibly powerful. And I know that people who love Ulysses or love Scrivener really love them. And like those camps are distinct. And there are people who, especially with Scrivener, like our friend, Dan Morin, who writes novels, right? I know he's talked about Scrivener in the past as being a really useful tool, not only to write, but to manage ideas, to move pieces around. They're very, very powerful. But I think they're just a little overkill for where I am.
Yeah. I used to attend the Church of Scrivener. I will say that. Like one of our very first episodes in the Mac Power Users catalog was about Scrivener. And that, because I wrote some books for Wiley Press on Mac and iPad. And I also, as a lawyer, did very long, very deep writing projects that were heavily research based. And that's Scrivener's forte. And I know it was developed as a novel writing tool. At one point I was on their website as a lawyer using it, but the thing that Scrivener does so well is you can have your research combined in the same app that you're doing your writing. And so on a big screen, you can split the pane down the middle, and on the right, you've got all your PDFs, your research, your text, your Word docs. It'll take anything you throw at it. And then on the left side, you've got your little writing prompt, your blinking cursor. And then on top of that, it kind of works just like Ulysses on like this bucket system where you can make a big outline of everything you want to write about, and each thing gets its own little bucket, and you fill that bucket with words. And then eventually you put them all together and you've got a book or a long brief or something. Those books I wrote for Wiley were done that way. I did a very extensive outline, which I turned into OPML, which Scrivener imported and turned into a series of buckets. And every time I'd sit down at the Mac, I would pick another bucket. Okay, today, because those books were about working with your Mac and your iPad. So, okay, today I'm going to write about writing long form on your Mac. And I would go to the long form bucket and I would go to the right side of the screen, get all my research notes, and I'd write that section of the book. And you just kind of fill all the buckets. And then when you're done, you've got a book. And people, whether you're writing a novel or nonfiction, that is an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah, I mean, I know when I've done my 2 books, it was very easy for me to sort of lose where I was, right? Like the second book, the one that really kind of matters in this conversation, I looked at the history of the iMac overlaid with the history of OS X and how the interplay of those two things. And so I was basically writing chronologically, right? It wasn't fiction. It wasn't something that seems way too complicated for my brain. But even writing something chronologically was something that I knew really well, but had lots of research I was pulling into it. It was kind of easy to get lost and to realize that, what I'm working on in this moment actually doesn't belong where I've put it. It belongs somewhere else. And keeping up with that can be a lot of overhead and can lead to errors or mistakes or lost work or something like that. And so if that's the sort of project you're working on, I totally agree. I think tools like this can really, really be helpful.
Yeah, I had another Scrivener project I had in my lawyer days. One of the areas of law I spent a lot of time working on were trade secrets. California has a very active trade secret law, and so I dealt with that a lot for clients. And I had a Scrivener project that had just hundreds of contracts that I'd worked on involving trade secrets over my career. And I would use those in the reference or research tab. And then I would build out new contracts and I'd say, oh yeah, I want to talk about this one involves, 7 secret herbs and spices for fried chicken. Let me look at that KFC contract I worked on. I know there's some text in there that I could, because lawyers plagiarize like crazy. So I would have, that was a unique use. It wasn't writing a novel, but it was having this big, rich text research database, but then being able to build on a component basis on the left side of the screen into these buckets. And that was a really good tool. I also used it for discovery. There were some other things as a lawyer I did with it that were kind of unusual uses for it, but Scrivener was perfect for that. That said, I'm not currently using Scrivener. Praise the Lord.
Oh man. Yeah, I think they're really, really powerful, but I think you got to know kind of where you stand with them. I think another feature that is important to some types of writers and maybe not others, is like version control and like markup tools, right? So you have something you've written, you're sending it to somebody else. What kind of tools can you use in conjunction? That's, I think, where the classics come in, right? Word has track changes. Pages has it, but to a lesser degree.
I want to defend Pages. It actually does. I think Pages track changes are just fine.
Okay.
I mean,
good. I haven't tried them in a while.
Yeah,
so
I've done
awesome.
contract work with it. I mentioned at the top of the show, I've added like 10,000 words to that productivity field guide, and all of that was tracked with an editor through Pages. I took all the text, put it in Pages, sent it to him, and I was able to see every change he made with track changes. It's perfectly fine. The problem is, of course, in business, usually the other side doesn't have Pages. It's not that the feature's bad, but
right, they're using Word a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Google Docs also has commenting, and you can track version history in Google Docs as well. That can be something that a lot of these apps don't address directly. Is like, okay, what if I really need to go back to the version that I had yesterday, right? And then for a lot of these tools, you're relying on something like Time Machine if you're working on the Mac. Scrivener has some tools around this, but if you're using a Markdown editor, track changes, version history aren't necessarily going to be there, but you may not need them there in a tool like that either. But if you do need those things, it's something to consider when looking at these apps.
Yeah, agreed. Scrivener has a feature called Snapshot. I don't think it's as good as track changes, but it works. So there are options out there. And quite often, this can be a workflow question. Getting back to my days writing for Wiley, I wrote the book in Scrivener, but then at one point I burned my ships and moved all the text into Microsoft Word, and then my Wiley editor got involved. And Scrivener was no longer gospel for that book. It was the Word doc.
Sure.
Another kind of category we were thinking about is plain text purist, right? They're out there. I mean, we talked about Markdown, but I think there's another level to this where people just want to write everything in plain text always. And the poster child app for that is BB Edit.
Yep, I think so. I mean, BB Edit may be the poster child for like Mac apps at this point. I mean, it's been around so long. You can use it as a text editor, but you can also use it as a code editor, right? It has lots of features in it. But honestly, the way I use it, like I'm using it right now because I take notes as we record for edit points for our editor, Jim. And it's just a plain text file. It's saved on my desktop. It's just super simple, super stripped down. But what I like about BB Edit is you can build what you need within it. And I mean that literally, like you can turn on and off components of the application, but you can also make your own scripts and your own extensions to BB Edit to really make it do what you need it to do. I mean, it's an all-time favorite of so many Mac users.
I remember back in the day, so many people that bought Macs to run BB Edit. That was the reason they switched.
Absolutely.
I'm curious though why you would do the show notes in BB Edit as opposed to Taut. I mean, Taut is quick capture. It drops off your menu bar. How come you don't do it?
So the way that I'm using a modified version of a shortcut that Jason Snell wrote, and it relies on some tools in BB Edit to do its thing. So I will use BB Edit for certain things. If you have anything that won't open, BB Edit will open it, right? But it works well with the system that I sort of adopted from Jason.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about BB Edit is if you are of a kind of computer bent and you want to invest some time into it, like it does regular expressions fantastically. It does like multiple search and replace. Like the search and replace tools on it are like just leveled up over anything else I've ever seen. So if you want to write in it and get that kind of power features, kind of in the same way I talk about drafts, it's like that, but more. I personally have always aspired to using BB Edit, and I never get into a workflow where I consistently use it. So I've never been a regular user of the app, but I have definitely spent time in it. I understand why it is what it is. Then another kind of category I would say is the Obsidian Note Plan crowd, right?
Sure.
Where people are using Obsidian or Note Plan to run their whole system. Those are, editors, which are fantastic. You can write on your long form stuff just fine in Obsidian or Note Plan, and it's going to show up on all your devices. And just like drafts, you can send it out or do whatever you want with it. And you get the benefit of linking to your research. I guess when we were talking long form earlier, I should have included really Obsidian and Note Plan in that category, although it's kind of a different take on it.
Yeah. I think they're related, but they're a little bit different too.
We've done shows on both of those apps, so go listen to those shows if you're curious.
Yeah, lots of good stuff in the old archives. What about the sort of the writing environment, right? Another thing that software can do is change where we are, or give us a set of tools that shift our thinking and maybe shift the way that we work. Example, as we mentioned, IA Writer earlier. They have a focus mode where it can be as simple as the paragraph I'm working on is front and center, and the paragraphs below and above it are grayed out, right? It can be that simple. We just did a big episode on focus modes and do not disturb, right? It can be another useful tool when it comes to write to tune out the outside world. But you go further than I do. You're going all the way to Yosemite.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I do. I want to just step back to IA Writer for a second, though, because it really is, I think, the best implementation of this. Not only does it allow you to only put in dark text the current paragraph you're working on, it also keeps that paragraph in the center of the screen. Usually with a word processor, you're always writing at the bottom. And if you're working with text above and below, you don't see what's below. And I know there's plugins for Obsidian and other ways to do that, but I think IA Writer does that particularly elegantly. And that's just one more reason why you may want to look at IA Writer for focused writing. But the thing you're referring to was kind of my justification for spending $3,500. I bought the Vision Pro, and I still really like it. And I watch a lot of videos and movies in it. But what kind of work do I do in it? By far the most common thing is I have on Wednesdays, I have like an afternoon where I write blog posts, newsletters, things for the future. And I've just really gotten a habit of just putting that thing on, and I've got a keyboard and trackpad in my lap. I have a comfy chair. If you're watching the video, it's right over there. And I sit in it and just kind of, I always go to the Yosemite environment. I tell myself that's like a way to like program my brain to think, okay, this is where you do your writing. But it is completely distraction free. And I don't really think about the headset being on. I just kind of just get into the writing process. I don't have any other apps running, any distractions, and I find it really useful. The downside is I do it all in Apple Notes, which isn't the greatest app for writing, but because the adoption rate is so low on the Vision Pro, I don't have a lot of options.
Yeah. That's the kicker there. I think I was putting your blog post about this from 2024 in the show notes, and I was getting ready to ask, "Are you still using Apple Notes?" And the answer is yes.
That's all
it turns
I can
out.
do. If IA Writer's listening, please make a Vision Pro version.
Yeah,
that would be great. But yeah, drafts. None of these are on the Vision Pro, so that's it. But I still do it, and I like it. Like I said, am I just justifying the purchase? No, I don't think so. I think for me, that's become a thing. And it's a place I can go and write and be left alone.
Yeah. There's been a Vision Pro on Facebook Marketplace, and I just, every couple weeks, I check in on it. If he ever sells that thing, he's going to take a bath on it. It's gotten pretty cheap.
Yeah, I'm not going to sell it. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I'm saying like you're an outlier, I think, maybe
but
on
I
your
mean,
use of it.
I'm not using it a lot. I'm not in it every day. OmniFocus, they went to all the effort to make OmniFocus work in Vision Pro. Even though that's my task manager, I never manage tasks in Vision Pro. I kind of strap in to do long form work and writing. And also, I really like, because I live with 3 women, all the guy shows I like, um, you know, you know, sci-fi stuff like that. I watch in there because it's better in there, and nobody else in the house is interested in it anyway.
Yeah. No, I dig it. We've talked a lot about writing. I said we were going to use publishing a little bit differently, and we're going to come to that. But for me, and I think for basically everybody, the intermediate step is editing. Right? I've taken this writing, I've done it on the Mac, I've captured thoughts in my iPhone, I've sat down with my iPad to get some stuff done. But when it comes to editing, I think you and I both have some ideas here, but I think the high level idea for both of us is for us to edit ourselves, which is going to be difficult. If we're doing that, a context switch is needed, right? If I'm writing something in IA Writer and I think I finish it, and I just, okay, now I'm editing and I'm sitting in the same spot, I'm using the same app, everything is the same. For me, at least, that is not enough. I need something to change. I think that's true for you too.
Yeah, I mean, I need something to change. Also, often I just need time. Once I finish writing it, I can't edit it because in my head I know what I meant to say, and that's
Yes.
what my eyes see, even if that's not what's there. But there's a lot of great technology again here. You can have voice or text to voice now is easier than ever. You can write a shortcut and just sit back and have it read it to you so you can listen to it. Or, like I said, like you were saying, you could take a Markdown and render it in rich text and read it in a completely different format. This is another one where there is a AI component. We're talking about getting data on your document IA Writer. That's a form of AI, but also, Grammarly is the big one that is really good at going through and trying to figure out if there's any grammatical problems with your text. And every time I run it, it finds 1 or 2 errors that I should have caught. And
Same.
so I find it very useful for that. But as AI's got more powerful, Grammarly tries to convince me its value by changing my voice. I kind of prefer the 2-year-old version of Grammarly over the current one.
Same.
Because, but it's easy enough. You just click ignore and you don't accept those kind of changes.
Yeah.
There are some other ones out there. I tried at the New Year Pro Writing Aid, which is another one out there. They had a deal, so I thought about switching. I just decided I know Grammarly, and Grammarly also has an iOS component, and Pro Writing Aid didn't when I looked at it. Maybe they do now. So I just stuck with Grammarly. But there's other ones out there that are helping you improve upon it.
Yeah, I learned this lesson about something needs to change for editing at my college paper. So the workflow for an article, right? A reporter would work on an article during the day. Towards the afternoon, the copy editor would sit down, make a bunch of changes or suggestions. The reporter would go back and, they would work to get things ready. It would come to me as the page layout guy, after 5 p.m. I'd put it on the page. And once I was done with the page, I would print it, and the editor would go back over it again. So several things have changed. One, there's been time. They haven't looked at it in several hours, right? They're looking at a lot of articles in the day, but generally kind of back to back to back. It's been a couple hours at least since the reporter's been quote unquote done with it. I get it on the page. They read it. The format has changed. They were previously reading it on a Mac and proofreading on a Mac, usually in Word. And now they're looking at a big 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that is printed out. And that also means that the design, the sort of, not only the format, but the way that looks has changed as well, because the text flows differently on a page of newsprint as opposed to a screen. And it was amazing when I first started, when I first was introduced into that process that predated me, how many pages would come back to me as the layout guy with articles all marked up in red ink. It's like, wait, didn't you read this like 4 times? Like, yeah, but now it's different because now it's on a page and now it's printed and now I'm sitting down at a desk reading it as opposed to sitting down at a Power Mac G3 or whatever. And that lesson has really stuck with me. And when you are editing yourself, those things need to change. And that's why I use a tool like Grammarly, because I'm editing myself like 99.9% of the time. Grammarly is an outside tool, right? It is doing some of those things. For me, when I'm writing for the web, I will get everything in Mars Edit, which is a WordPress client for the Mac. And it has this previewer. And in my preview, it looks just like my website. And what I've written is in there. And that's enough of a difference, right? It's not in Markdown. It's not in my plain text typeface. It looks like it's going to be how it's going to look on the web. Sometimes I'll even make that window narrow, like I'm reading it on a phone. And it's amazing how many times I can spot things that I wouldn't spot otherwise. It's really simple, but it really is impactful as well.
Yeah, our human brains are easily tricked. And, changing the environment. When I was a fancy lawyer, anything that was going to get filed with a court, I would always at the end print it and just get a red pen. And I even had a different desk I would use. I had a standing desk I would go over to. So I'd put myself in a different space. I'd have it in a physical form and have a red pen. I'd always find and make changes. Currently, what I do for the Mac Sparky stuff is I write it in Markdown. I render it in rich text for my edit, and then I actually hired somebody. I have a person that reads them before they get posted, and he always finds a few things too, because when you're editing yourself, that is a very difficult task. Another piece, we mentioned the Drang articles, and by the way, like you, every time I log into Drang, I see him writing another article about this. I'm like, what have I done? But I love that he's focused on this. But you don't necessarily need Grammarly. You can use a tool like Claude or OpenAI or Gemini. Sorry, I've brain farted there for a minute on Google's AI tool. But you can use those as well with a well-written prompt to also get you good feedback and catch grammar problems.
So when it comes to delivery, right? So this is for writing that is going to either be published or shared internally at work or something like that. There's a lot of options, and all these things interplay with each other, right? So my output does have an impact potentially on the tool that I'm using, or if I'm writing in rich text or plain text. For me, the golden rule is don't write in the CMS, right?
Yeah.
That came from a time when you would just like go back to your Safari tab and your stuff would be gone because Safari ran out of memory. That doesn't happen anymore. WordPress or whatever auto saves in the background. But it's another step in the process to potentially spot things that you want to change or that are wrong. I actually very rarely see WordPress because I use Mars Edit, but I'm not usually writing in Mars Edit unless it's short. I'm doing IA Writer, being in a different environment, and then I'm using Mars Edit as the delivery tool. That's where I make sure I have the headline that I want, make sure the slug is right, add the categories, that sort of thing. But of course, not everyone's writing to the web, right? There's lots of other tools for print and PDF. We've mentioned Brett Terpstra. We should mention Marked again. This excellent app that Brett makes that is a Markdown previewer. The version 3 is now in beta, but it also does so much more than that. It really, if you do a lot of stuff in Markdown, Marked has got to be in your doc at this point.
Agreed. If you're delivering to print/PDF, that's where you're going to want like a traditional word processor. Some of the Markdown apps can just render to rich text for you directly, but if you want to have more say over it, I think Pages is excellent. There's people out there using Word every day because they need it for work, and if you are, you know who you are. But I don't think at this point you should have to go buy Word unless you have a good reason. I think the free app Pages for most of us is just fine.
Yeah.
And the layout tools in Pages, in my opinion, are superior to Word anyway. So, yeah.
A lot of us do a lot of writing in Google Docs, right? And sometimes, like, I realize when we were putting this together, Google Docs is one of those tools that, like, it is the editor, but it is also sometimes the delivery method. Like sometimes I'm just writing a Google Doc
Yeah.
and that's the output as well. The lines are blurry sometimes there.
Yeah.
And there's lots of good and bad things about Google Docs. If you need collaboration, it's basically the top of the list. But one thing I found helpful, depending on what I'm doing, is Google Docs has a pageless mode. So by default, it looks like a regular word processor. You basically have, your representation of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. But depending on what I'm working on, that's actually not what I want. And there's this pageless mode in Google Docs. So it acts more like a web page where it's just one long thing. And that can be also very useful. Like say that your output is a Google Doc, but it's a set of processes for work. And maybe you have text and images, right? And look, well, of course the image is going to fall on the page break. Like if you're not going to print it, if it's just going to be something that lives on the web for people to reference, do you need page breaks? Like maybe not. And once I sort of leaned into that, that's been useful for me for my sort of internal stuff at work.
Yeah, there was a time that Google Docs was the only option for collaborative word processing online.
Mm-hmm.
They had such a lead because the syncing problem was so hard to solve. I mean, this wasn't that long ago. But that problem has been solved, and Apple has APIs, and there's a lot of people that are making very powerful online syncing, like even just like an Apple Note share. You can easily see the other person typing now, and that's from Apple, which this is clearly not their focus. So the lead that Google Docs have is not as large as it used to be. That being said, I would probably argue that they still have the lead over everybody else for collaborative online word processing. And there's a lot of good reasons to use it, but it's not particularly pretty. I don't think it's very user-friendly. It's best in Chrome. There's a bunch of asterisks that come with it. So I generally try to avoid it, to be honest, but I've done a lot of work in Google Docs over the years, and it's just fine. But for the kind of writing I like to do, kind of the thoughtful stuff we've been talking about, I much would prefer to start in a Markdown app, and then if I'm collaborating with somebody, then I dump it into Google Docs at the end, just like I did in the old days with Microsoft Word.
For sure. It is not the best place to spend your time.
Yeah. But, I feel like we did a pretty good job surveying the various pieces of writing workflows as they stand today. The takeaway I would recommend listening to this is think about ways that you can use the technology to improve your writing process and, the written word that you produce. Because, again, going back to the beginning, we've got this weird time now where artificial intelligence can kind of fake that it's a good writer. But if you know what you're looking for, it's actually not a very good writer. So don't kid yourself that it can write better than you. You still are the master of your words, and you should want to be. But at the same time, there is a tool set, and there is an app workflow that can make the words you write better. And if that's what is important to you, take a good look at this workflow we've talked about today and let us know, what is your preferred workflow for this stuff, and how do you get the best words out of your brain?
Yeah, hit us up.
We are the Mac Power Users. You can find us over at relay.fm/MPU. Go there for feedback and sign up for membership for more power users. We'd love to have you on board. Thanks to our sponsor this week, our friends over at Squarespace. For you more power users, stick around. We're going to be talking about the digital legacy and how we make that work for us. And otherwise, we'll see you next time.